Hi, everybody. How are you? And thank you for joining us today for a special edition of Deborah Kobylt Live. And we're just going to get right to our guest on the phone right now, calling from beautiful sunny Toluca Lake, California. We've got Michael Reagan. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you from Toluca Lake.
Yeah, you're in front of an enormous studio audience. You can hear them clapping for you. Michael Reagan, talk host, author, commentator at Newsmax, son of President Ronald Reagan and actress Jane Wyman, president of the Reagan Legacy Foundation. We're going to get into that in a minute. However, on the phone just a few moments ago, you were adding in a few other bits of information about yourself. Would you like to add on?
Yeah, well, people, really don't know about your life when your parents are so famous. But I was outboard world champion, powerboat racing 1967, inboard rookie of the year 1966, set 5 world records in powerboat racing in the 1980s, raised almost $2 million for different charitable causes with those races that I did. Single largest fundraiser for the United States Olympic team back in 1982. I did a race from New Orleans to St. Louis on the Mississippi River. Broke the existing record and raised $500,000 for the United States Olympic team.
It is true. You sort of, that kind of major fact or facts kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes. I'm actually glad that you brought that up. I really am, and congratulations for all that. And in fact, we're going to get a little later on in the show a little bit more into your philanthropic efforts because you do so much. And right now, we're going to talk about one that you just spearheaded June 6th, which was the 74th anniversary of D-Day. And you founded the Walkway to Victory over in Normandy, which honors American, British, and Canadian soldiers who helped liberate France and other European nations in World War II. I'm going to have you take it away. Tell us a little bit about the Walkway to Victory.
Well, a lot of people don't know my father was the very first president to actually show up on D-Day.
Oh, wow.
The 40th anniversary of D-Day back in 1984 when he gave those 3 great speeches to Point du Hoc and what have you. And, I got involved at Normandy a few years ago when I was invited to go over and raise the American flag at the American Cemetery, and I was playing golf with a young man, 28 years old, and told him I was leaving the next day for Paris, and the next day after that to Normandy to raise the flag. He had no idea why there was an American cemetery at Normandy. No idea. And I finally said to him, I said, did you think D-Day is when your report card came home? And it just really bothered me. So I decided to start working a lot with Normandy. And I went to St. Mary Glees, first town freed by America on the morning of D-Day. All the paratroopers were headed to St. Mary Glees and that whole area. That's where the bridges were. They had to take and hold to allow the 4th Infantry to come and split Normandy in half, if you will, and win the war. And so we really became friends with the people there, with the museum there, the Airborne Museum, because the 101st and 82nd Airborne, that was their Gettysburg.
That's
and
right.
That's where they were headed.
How many soldiers total, Michael, were there over those couple of months that they were over Normandy?
I mean, there was I think there were 5,000 buried there before they moved them down to the American Cemetery, at Normandy. But when I opened up the Ronald Reagan Center there in 2015, I wanted to do something else. So we partnered with the Airborne Museum, created the Walkway to Victory, and people can go to walkwaytovictory.com and order a brick to honor one of those that you mentioned that, in fact, fought in the Second World War in France, in Germany, through that whole area. And they can buy a brick, and then we lay the bricks in the walkways. We just laid about the first 300 bricks in April. And so about every quarter we'll be laying more and more bricks that have been purchased for people to remember those loved ones that served in the Second World War. And it's a great program for people to remember someone they knew, they lost, they loved, who fought in that war that freed the world.
Now, can it be for any person, man or woman, who fought in the war? It doesn't have to be someone who was over fighting in Normandy. Is that correct? Because I'd like to lay a brick for my dad, who fought in World War II and obviously came back. Any of us can lay a brick, right, for their loved one.
Yeah, anybody can lay a brick. There's nurses there who were there that played a huge part in all of this. So, again, they can go there, order the brick, we'll lay it in, and then when they visit Normandy at some point, and everybody should, they can see that Walkway to Victory laid out with the names of their loved ones their memories that they had of them. And everybody loves it. And I tell you, since we've gotten involved with everybody in Normandy at St. Mary Glees and doing this walkway, it's been wonderful it's touched everybody.
And it connects to different buildings there, isn't that correct?
Yes, there's 4 different buildings, and we just put in a Ronald Reagan Center a couple of years ago so people can have conferences there on freedom. We're also going to be honoring the 5 that came back. I don't know if you saw that series on Netflix that Spielberg put together about the 5 directors, Capra and Ford and Weiler and Houston and Stevens, who were there during the Second World War. In fact, Stevens, I think, and Houston landed on D-Day at Normandy.
Oh, is that right?
And we're going to be honoring those 5, as we'll be honoring those who served in the war, actors, actresses, and what have you that served in the war. Jack Palance and Glenn Ford and Audie Murphy, and just go through a whole list.
I read a story about Jimmy Stewart. He was too thin. They didn't want him, right? And then he bulked up a little bit, and then they took him. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah. Then he starred in all the movies. Yeah, absolutely right. Jimmy Stewart's a great guy. You know, his son, Ron McClain, Michael and Ron McClain and I went to summer camp together, school together for years. And I always think about Ron because Ron, who served in Vietnam, was killed on his very last day in Vietnam back in the 60s. And it was just so, it ripped the heart out of that whole family. And again, for those people who say that people who are rich don't have anybody ever serving in the war, they really need to look at people like Ron McClain and others who went out and served and gave their lives.
And so many others. They literally stepped off the set. They went right into the U.S. Army barracks, right? You've got Paul Newman was one of them, Charles Bronson, right? There were so many. Henry Fonda, as you said, your dad, a lot of people. They really had a sense of, fighting for America then. And they really wanted to go and defend our country. I mean, it's pretty tremendous. And so many people, though,
they really did.
Yeah, and so many people don't know, especially a lot of younger people, honestly, what happened over in Normandy. I was peppering my 17-year-old last night, and I'm happy to say that he is well educated enough at school that he knows about it and he remembered. But a lot of people don't. So that's why it's important that you're doing this as well. So a lot of people who aren't familiar with the history get familiar with it.
But they really, and what happens so often we think other people are going to teach the history to our own children. And it's really up to us to really do it. I mean, Google it, whatever you want to do, St. Mary Glees. I don't know how many of your audience might have ever seen the movie The Longest Day. Red Buttons in that movie played a soldier paratrooper by the name of John Steele. And what you remember about that movie is he's hanging from a church steeple. And what have you, he's faking like he's been shot. He gets shot in the foot, actually. And that steeple is in St. Mary Glees. And as you drive into St. Mary Glees today, you'll see a parachute hanging from the church steeple with a dummy on the end of it, portraying what happened, in the movie and on that day, 4 o'clock in the morning of D-Day.
I remember it so well. And, also people have to remember, if they're taking a trip over to France and going to Paris, this is just a hop skip. I mean, it's something that everyone should go and see. Everyone, right?
It really is. You read about it, and then you actually go there, and you sit there and go, oh, my God, how in the world did they do that? I mean, how did they do it? How were they able to scale those cliffs the way they did and really begin the march to freedom, in the world? And you just are absolutely amazed. And you know what else you find out? The French in St. Mary Glees and that whole area love Americans.
Oh, wow. They do. They appreciate everything that we've done. I mean, they know that we were responsible for helping to set them free and so many of the other countries there at the time as well. So you're right about that. They're very appreciative. And there's still enough people alive where they remember and they know what happened. So, yeah, it's very, very important. I know that I don't have a lot of time with you today because I know you just had very limited time. I do also want to talk about, before we get into some of your other philanthropic endeavors, $250 a donation for this brick. That's incredibly reasonable, and it goes toward the Reagan Legacy Foundation. And tell us a little bit about what you do with the Legacy Foundation and that $250.
Okay, well, you go to walkwaytovictory.com, you order the brick. I'll also send you a DVD that we did, Heroes of World War II. I'll send you a DVD. And where the money goes is, it goes partially to, St. Mary Glees, Normandy, France, to the museum there, the Airborne Museum, for them to be able to make sure that place stays the way it should stay. And then there's another part that comes to Reagan Legacy Foundation. And what we do is we provide scholarships to the men and women who serve aboard the USS Ronald Reagan, but not only to the men and women who serve, but we're the only ones to provide scholarships to their loved ones who are back home, who may also be wanting to educate themselves and better their education for a better future. So we provide a $1,000 scholarship to the men and women who serve on the Reagan. We provide $2,000 scholarships to the family members left home who are trying to better their education. So all the money goes out to these type of programs.
Michael, you're an amazing man because you're always thinking of how you can honor someone and at the same time help other people. I mean, let's talk a little bit about you were responsible for bringing 1,500 kids to the Dodger Stadium for the first time in their lives, right? There's so much that you've done. Could you tell me a little bit? Also, I know that you take some with the Young Americans Foundation as well. You go over to your dad's ranch in Santa Barbara. You take them up there. I mean, you're involved in so much.
In fact, I'm going to be speaking at the high school conference at the Young Americas Foundation Ranch Center in Santa Barbara on June 20th, kicking off the high school conference up there. I work with them a lot, their high school conferences, college conferences, and what have you. I took a group to the library the other day up there in Simi Valley.
The Reagan Library, right.
The Reagan Library. I work with the Mixed Roots Foundation. That's what we do. We put together teams, raise the money, and we were able to sponsor 1,500 foster children to go to their very first Dodger game. We did that on May 25th. In fact, Mixed Roots was just doing it last weekend up in San Francisco. They're doing it in Minneapolis and what have you, because these poor kids in foster care, if we're not there for them, nobody's going to be there for them when they age out of foster care. It gives you some ugly numbers. 60% of the kids in foster care will end up on the streets, jail, or human sex trafficking. It is an absolute government failure is what it is, and anything we can do to try and help those kids to better their future, we do.
It's incredible, all that you do. You're also an author. How many books have you written? Is it 4, 5?
No, I'm actually, I think 8. I think great. I hate to sell it. It's a great Father's Day gift. I have a book out called Lessons My Father Taught Me.
Hey, wait a minute. You took my line. I was going to say that. I think it's a great Father's Day gift. Okay, I'm gonna say it. It's a terrific read because I've read it. I love it. I've read a few of your books, but this one is the ultimate. I mean, look, other than the brick, because I think the bricks also are a terrific gift for Father's Day, birthday.
Amazon.com for that one.
There's no doubt about it. But Lessons My Father Taught Me, a terrific Father's Day gift. Tell us a little bit about that briefly.
Well, it's the stories about riding out to the ranch with my dad when I was a kid. How I learned about America, how I learned about the military, how I learned about basically everything in my life. And those rides out to the ranch when I was a little kid. A lot of people say, wasn't it great having your dad as president? I said, yeah, that was great, but it was more great having my father as a father. Because when you have a family member run for office, you lose the family member if they win. Their family becomes everybody voted for them.
It becomes everybody else's. That's right. All of a sudden, there goes Dad, and it's like, wait, do I have to make an appointment?
I had 20 years with my father before he got into politics. I'm blessed. I had a great mother in Jane Wyman. I had a great father, but I don't think you learn to appreciate it till later on in life. I think all of us go through that process. So I learned a lot of stuff from my father. And the last thing I tell about the book, the last thing I learned was forgiveness. My father forgave the man who tried to kill him. And so I had to learn to forgive also, and that was the lesson I learned from my father. And I think all of us, if we're going to hold grudges against people and let that grudge destroy our lives, or as my wife used to say to me, don't let someone else's attitude determine yours for the remainder of the day, I was letting that happen to me too much. And when I decided to open my heart and start forgiving and not letting that drive me, all the other stuff opened up.
You've had quite a life and quite an arc to your life as well, and it certainly was not always easy. And a lot of that we could learn about in your books and about you. I mean, even going back to high school. I know high school was not such an easy place for you. You moved around a little bit. And there are a lot of lessons we can learn from you through the writings and all that you've gone through. I just want to mention something about you that you did for me, and I'll never forget it, Michael. And you know what I'm going to bring up, right? The New York City Marathon last year in November. Do you know when I crossed that finish line? And I think I was one of the last people to cross. You were the first person to text me and say congratulations. I mean, you must have been on that app all day because honestly,
I was.
I really was one of the last ones to come in. You know it. I went into that.
Listen, I was watching you, my wife, my daughter who ran, and all that. I was watching you all day long. I know you were going through some really tough stuff with your shin splints and your knees and what have you. But you muscled through it and you finished the race. And you know something? You got the same medal as the person got who finished in front of you. I remember when I did my first marathon, I did Hawaii back in 2001. I did it in 6 hours and 14 minutes, 3:07 splits. And I said, you know, I've got the same T-shirt, finisher shirt. I've got the same medal as the guy who finished 2 hours or 4 hours in front of me, and I already owned a car.
Hey, look, I was dead set on doing that. Even at mile 16 when I grabbed a piece of pizza from somebody because I was starving, I said, I'm in it to finish this. I mean, it was just sheer will and determination. Yeah. Sadly, I did mess up my knees a little bit. In fact, I tore a meniscus yesterday. But I just wanted the people to know that while you and your family were long gone after the marathon for them, probably eating dinner, boom, you were the first one to text me, and I'll never forget that. Finally, before I let you go, the state of politics in California, because, of course, your dad wasn't just president of the United States. He was governor here in California. What do you think? Newsom, Cox? I know you must be I know you're a Cox guy.
I think it's the first time in a long time Republicans have a chance of getting back Sacramento and putting a Republican in Sacramento to try and stop the state assembly and Senate for what they've done to the state of California. You know, I was born in this state when it was number one in everything. Number one in education. You name it, it was number one in everything. It was the Golden State, not because of the weather. It was the Golden State because of the opportunities you had here.
That's right.
And everything was really golden in the state. And it's absolutely been destroyed by what's going on in Sacramento. And we need new leadership. And I look at the fact that John Cox got, 1.1 million votes, and Gavin Newsom got 1.3 million, and spent how much money to get 1.3 million votes? I think we've got a real chance to take back Sacramento and the governorship with John Cox. And I'm going to be doing an event for him, I think, on the 19th of July. And I tell you, I'm excited about the fact that we have a chance, because if we don't take back Sacramento, it's not going to get better. It's going to get progressively worse.
It will. And if I like to put party aside, I really do. Vote for the man or the woman, his integrity, his record. I mean, I understand this tends to be more of a liberal state for real. But I mean, Newsom, first of all, his integrity, that's already been established. But also, he makes Bernie Sanders look like a conservative. I mean, watch where he's putting your money and your spending, really. I mean, would you just I always like to say, people, would you just hand over your checkbook to anybody and say, here, write a check? No. So we need to be a little more cognizant of where our money is going and just...
You know what I tell people? You know, it's very simple what I tell people. I say, if you like the homeless population coming into your neighborhood, if you like the fact that there's illegals coming across the border, if you like the sanctuary cities, if you like the schools being number 48 in the country instead of first in the country, you know, if you like your children looking at you and saying, Mom and Dad, we're going to have to leave the state because we can't afford to live here in California. We have to go someplace where we can live, and they start taking your grandkids out of the state. If you like those things, you vote for Gavin Newsom. That's who you vote for. But if you're saying, I don't really like that, if you like $5 a gallon gas, vote for Gavin Newsom. But if you really want to change, there is a change in the wind called John Cox, and that's exactly what I would do.
And put your party aside. Just look at what one guy wants to do and the other guy wants to do. Look at where you are, and if you're happy with it, okay, what can I say? And if you're not, then you got to really look at the alternative here and just say, maybe it really is time for a change. Also, just from a personal point of view, the way Newsom has conducted himself to me is disgusting. So I'm just going to go on record of saying that. So if that's okay with people, that says something to me about the way he's going to run the state. Anyway. Enough said. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, Michael. I didn't mean to cut you off.
My friend, I've got to go.
I know you do. Thank you for being with us. Again, a quick plug again for the Walkway. Would you please?
ToVictory.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Michael Reagan. Terrific man and very philanthropic man. the Walkway to Freedom. Please look it up. It's a terrific way to honor our veterans from World War II, all veterans and those who served over in Normandy. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for a special edition of Deborah Kobylt Live. And may I remind you, you may find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and you can listen to us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and also on our website, deborahkobylt.com. See you next time.